Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Abstracts. And today we're joined by Martina Šindelářová Skupeňová. Martina, thank you very much for joining today. So I'll have introduced you a little bit in the text accompanying the show, but could you give us a brief introduction to who you are?
Hello, everyone. I'm Martina from Brno in the Czech Republic, and I've been teaching at Masaryk University for more than 15 years now. At Masaryk University, there's an institution called Language Centre, and it's a center institution that provides language classes and support for basically everyone at the university. Mainly, we are targeting the students, but there are also services we provide for staff or for incoming students and professors and for public in Brno as well. I mainly teach English classes, but in the past I also have experience with teaching Czech for foreigners, which is also something we do a lot, and it's something that is growing at our institution. And within my English teaching practice, I have started to be really interested in activities and support types that foster students' learner autonomy. And that's why I'm here having this conversation with Tom today.
Right. Super interesting. So let's warm up a little bit before we talk about your article, which is the reason for our conversation today. But just tell us a little bit about your own language learning background. So I believe you also speak German, right?
Yeah, that's German is my second foreign language, and actually this combination of always learning one of those languages at school and one of them being always a bit behind and always trying to catch up on like independently or individually, I think that's what has influenced my teaching practice a lot as well.
Okay.
So I believe my German is okay, but even now, you know, I need to keep thinking of what can I do to maintain the level I used to have, and how to still be in touch.
German? It's English.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I see. Okay. How do you go about doing that? How do you keep the German and the English together?
Well, living in Brno, it's really close to Austria and Germany, and we do have contacts with our international colleagues, and they are like kind enough to let me practice. So I try, you know, whenever there's a chance to speak to them in German, even if it would be easier for me and maybe even for them to switch into English, but I try to have those conversations and to have not only the small talk situations done in German, but also sometimes try to have those more professional conversations. And on personal basis, I just buy magazines and watch crime series, which is
okay. So that's kind of your interests in there. That's nice. That keeps you motivated to keep studying.
Exactly.
Then. Yeah. Right. So we are, you know, it's funny we are talking about autonomy. It's the topic. So how did you kind of get interested in that area? Was it because of this dual language learning background that you have?
I only realized later that it was somewhere in the background. As I mentioned, we do have a network of other university language centers that we cooperate with, and Helsinki have been really helpful in introducing different types of language support, and colleagues from Autonomous Learning Modules team at Helsinki University were visiting us, it must have been 14 years ago, and speaking about this program, this different type of course. So it's structured, it's a framework, it's credit-based, but still it's a way to support students learn autonomy because they are in charge of choosing what they want to study and how they want to do that. And we got really much inspired by that and started to try finding ways how to make those similar things possible at our university. We always had to adopt them a bit because Czech students at that moment, maybe it's already a bit different now as well, but those years ago, they were not used to anything like that. So when we wanted to introduce a similar course, we had to adopt the structure and the requirements, but that's where it started. And through those colleagues, I also got in touch with some kind of special interest groups, be it at IELTS or at CERTSLES, which is an association of language centers at higher institutions, and started to attend their conferences, started to attend their sharing sessions. And that's where it all started, yeah.
Right. I noticed that you mentioned students in the Czech there a little bit, and you got to kind of retarget materials directly for them. You can't just adopt them wholesale. So for anybody watching that's not so familiar with the Czech context, can you kind of paint a picture for us a little bit? Like, what's it like to learn a foreign language there?
It's been changing, obviously, but the situation we were facing those 14 years ago was that students were very much coming from secondary school experience that was still very teacher-centered, and that was still that would include some communicative practices and communicative teaching methods, but that would still they would, for example, have no experience with self-assessment. They would not be used to choosing their own learning materials. And this has been changing right now. I think they are much more used to bits and pieces of those practices. The textbooks and the curricula at secondary schools now include certain elements of self-assessment, for example. They are also more involved in like project work. They are usually able to choose sources they work with, and then they report about in class, and those kind of experience they already have. When we ask them about their previous experience, some of them would even have like learning log experience. So it's changed for better or for more diverse background. We are going to speak later about the article which we wrote together with my colleague who is teaching German. And probably the changes are always a bit faster when it regards English learning and teaching. So this seems to be a bit more progressive, and the students who also usually typically in the Czech schools choose English as their first foreign language. Okay. This is also very typical that the majority of schools would offer English as first language, and this is really the top foreign language taught here. When they come to university, in theory, they should be at about B2 level, according to CEFR, the European Framework for Languages. Usually they are much stronger because of this less focus on student-centered or learning-centered methods. They are usually much better in reading and listening, and their productive skills are not that strong.
Right. Yeah, that's probably fairly typical in a lot of contexts, I would guess.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting that the German is kind of following after the English there as well. These kind of changes. Hopefully that continues in a good direction. That's useful information. Probably a lot of people are not very familiar with that kind of level of education in Czech. So thank you for explaining that. And you mentioned your paper, so let's kind of turn to look at that a little bit. So it was published last year, and the title is Fostering Students' Self-Directed Language Learning, Approaches to Advising, and it was published in SiSAL. It's Studies in Self-Accessed Learning Journal, right out of Kanda University here in Japan. And I enjoyed it. It was a really good read. I think it's pretty relevant for this audience. So let's dive into some of the topics that you mentioned in the article. I think it'd be really helpful to learn more about your institution, Masaryk University, in particular the Language Centre where you work. I was fortunate enough to visit it last summer, but can you tell us a bit more about it and its background?
Okay, so as I was already mentioning, we provide mainly curricula-based language courses, as achieving certain language level is obligatory for every student at Masaryk University. Similarly to the situation at secondary schools, English is the dominant language, and at many programs, students would only study English. At some programs, they are required to study 2 languages. Whatever language it is, they come to us and we provide language courses for them. It's usually a mix of language for academic purposes and language for specific purposes. As I was also mentioning, the students population is now rather diverse in terms of how well prepared they already are when they enter the university, and also in terms of what needs they have regarding their studies. In some programs, English is really present from the very beginning. They only deal with English sources or foreign language sources, but once again, English would be dominant. In some programs, they are even required to do part of their studies abroad. So we also provide this kind of support, the courses that combine language training with intercultural communication training, for example. And some of the courses included in their curricula are languages for professional purposes. So they would also include skill-based training, presenting, academic writing. So it's really a mix what we are trying to cover. And that's why it was really useful for us to get this Helsinki inspiration to offer students something where they themselves can navigate the activities towards their personal aims.
Right.
So this was a chance to offer them something which they can personalize, which they can tailor-made to their needs, where they can cooperate across disciplines, because this course is offered for everyone at the university. It's modular, so they then enter modules, smaller groups, which focus on more specific things. And language advising is part of that course, and that's where we started providing language advising sessions at first.
Okay.
Because just like in Helsinki, we were aware of the need to support students, to provide them help in those in regulating their learning. And this has been working well for a couple of years, and we have been the team that has been providing those sessions also, did small studies, and we did observations about how it works, and we would disseminate this kind of experience. And that's where other colleagues offering courses at different departments or different languages even got interested, because they always identified groups of students who would benefit from such a support.
Okay, so it's kind of optional for those students to come in and participate, I see, and it's a credit-bearing course.
That's what the article is actually discussing, that right now we are providing language advising in different contexts. In the English autonomously course, the one where it all started, it's actually an integral part of the course, and students have to take it, or they take it, otherwise the course wouldn't really make sense. In other contexts where our colleagues got inspired, they are offering it as optional additional element, because it is more suitable for their students.
I see.
It is only offered as an additional chance or possibility to identify those individual elements that would make the course more beneficial or more targeted for the students.
I see. It's really quite a varied set of contexts you have there that you have to work with. You mentioned the advisors before. So who are they? Are they other students?
No. In some contexts, this might be students, and maybe that's what we will also face in the future. But the English language advisors are teachers who decided to take this role, and they got trained and like transferred into this position step by step by going to Helsinki to observe, and by reading on it, and by taking some training in skills like active listening, having those, really being able to feed this reflective dialogue. And this is a core group of English teachers who then further trained or introduced this role to our colleagues who got interested into that. So right now, I think our center is rather big. We have about 80 teachers, and I think about 12 of us are also, apart from teaching, are also providing language advising support.
Okay, all right, and this is the, a really big operation I can see that you've got going there. So you mentioned this English autonomously course, right? It's part of the article. Can you tell us a bit of detail about that? And then, seeing as we talked about German as well before, there's a partner kind of German course as well. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about those two.
Yeah, the idea of the article was actually to compare those two different contexts where language advising is provided. The original one, the English autonomously course, where it's really incorporated into the other activities. Students know it from the very beginning that this is what they are going to participate at, and it's organized as a series of 3 interviews that accompanies them through this course. At the first meeting, they plan their semester. In the mid semester, they meet with the advisor yet again to monitor how their learning within the English autonomously course is going on, and at the end, together with an advisor, they evaluate. So that's what we have been providing for a couple of years, and we thought it works well. And it's provided in the target language. That's maybe also important to say, that as students really buy this to get together, the language learning and the metacognition and the reflection, that's what they are interested in. So they do it all in the target language. And as this is English, they are also able to do that. Whereas in the German course that my colleague Radim was describing in the article, the situation is rather different. He offers language advising sessions as additional opportunity for students who take an obligatory course. And for some of those, this B2 level German course is really a big challenge. It's really something rather difficult, and something they are not very motivated to do, because it's their second foreign language, and so on and so forth. He describes some of the obstacles they are facing in the article as well. So we wanted both to see why they take this and what they expect from the advisors is very different in those two contexts, and whether this needs to affect somehow what is provided, how the interviews are actually conducted. And some of our expectations were confirmed, and some were actually shown as even more complex differences than we thought. It was a very small study, and we will continue in observing how the students perceive language advising as a service. But still, it provided us already with some insights that can really help us to develop language advising as a role, as something we provide for our students at our institution.
Yeah, because I can relate from the Japanese context. There's definitely some difficulties there with the language ability meeting the idea of doing reflection, kind of metacognitive reflection, like about learning. It can be quite challenging. So I know in a lot of that doesn't always take place in the target language here. Is that some of the kind of issues that you're kind of discussing there, between the differences between the two courses?
Exactly, yes. In the German course, students can choose what language they are going to use in the interviews. And if I remember correctly, Radim observed that it is about 1/3 of students who choose to take the conversations in the target language, but the majority prefers the first language because this allows them to go deeper, this allows them to really reflect. And as we were mentioning in the beginning of the article, there's theoretical support for both approaches, that you can actually aim at reflection in the target language, but with specific groups, especially those that they might feel the target language too challenging, that it's probably really worth offering the interviews to be conducted in their first language.
Right, definitely, no, for sure. So your study had two parts. There was a survey and then a kind of case study design. How about we talk about the survey first? So what did you do, and then what did you learn from the survey?
Yeah. The survey was to map those expectations and their previous experience, and to compare or contrast both groups. And to our surprise, both groups turned out to be similar in terms of how much, or rather how little, experience they have with autonomous learning. And then there were minor differences in what they feel they are ready to do themselves. We were using Tassinari's descriptors of learner autonomy to ask students what they can do. She has learner autonomy adopted into a set of descriptors. I can set my goals. I can evaluate my progress. And English Autonomously group seemed to be a bit more ready, a bit more capable of doing certain steps in self-regulating their learning, which is something we thought might be the case, because they already decided to take a course that would be focused. They would be relying on their self-regulating skills. So this confirmed, that what we were expecting, that the groups are at a different, they have different background in that respect. It was rather surprising to see that both groups have quite high expectations of what an advisor should help them with. Even if they felt they can do those things, they can choose materials, they would still expect that an advisor helps them choosing materials, for example. So it once again confirmed that self-study is something really extremely difficult, and this stage, where they are doing certain amount of work independently, but they have a chance to consult a language teacher or language advisor, that it provides them support, that provides them with more confidence, that it provides like a safer learning environment for them.
Yeah, also I think if for many learners today, the problem is not lack of availability of resources, it's that there's too many resources. There's actually a huge amount of resources available, and they might want the kind of expert voice to help them select a particular one or something. So that's interesting. And then following up from this, so where you compared the two groups and you found some things that kind of confirmed what you had thought, and what you talked about already, considering these trends in the Czech education system, with English maybe going ahead in this direction and German being a little behind, right? It kind of makes sense. And then you talk a bit more after about a case study. So what did you learn from that?
Based on the data from the questionnaire, we were able to select 2 students, one from each course with similar profile, to get more insight into the real expectations or requirements for the actual interviews. So both of those students were studying both English and German. But they were like, we were approaching them from this different angle, that in the English course, the interviews were focusing on their first foreign language, whereas in the German interviews, they were focusing on the second foreign language. And this was also students who both were discussing choosing materials, their materials, how to choose materials, what would be appropriate learning materials for them, and how to actually challenge themselves and motivate themselves. This balance between doing something that is challenging yet manageable and doing something that is motivating. So they were kind of facing similar posing similar questions, solving similar problems, and that's what we wanted to compare. And once again, we found some differences because for English, the student could already take inspiration and take advantage of their positive previous experience with language learning. So he would just kind of copy, imitate what has worked for him in the past, and he would just adopt it to his now more advanced, more academic needs. And he was also slightly more independent in making those adaptations. And the partner, the advisor was there really just a kind of partner, listening more and just, navigating the interview a bit. In the German advising situation, the advisor's role was a bit more active. He would lead the interview a bit more. And it was also a bit more difficult for the student to identify those possible ways to learn. In his previous German learning experience, there were not many things he could copy or imitate or he could use.
I see.
But he was able to kind of reframe those negative experiences, also use his some tips from his previous English learning experience, and by combining those two observations, there's something good I can use from my previous English learning, and I can kind of change the negative experience. I can learn from that. This hasn't worked for me, so I have to do it differently. And by doing this and by getting a bit more support from the advisor, he also found a way how to find materials that would be both motivational for him, that would be fun to work with, and that would be manageable also in terms of how challenging they are.
That's a kind of nice example of transfer there from the one language to the other. Sorry if you mentioned it before, but maybe I missed it. How long is each of these kind of interviews, and how long what's the kind of duration of the total program?
Yeah. It's a bit more fixed in English autonomously. We count on 30 minutes for each of those 3 sessions. Of course, sometimes students need a bit more time, but for logistics and for planning, we count on a series of 3 30-minute interviews.
Okay.
And that's why it's usually good to have one issue that needs to be discussed. So apart from doing some admin or checking whether the course is working as it should administratively, there's usually 1 to 2 issues that get discussed, and students usually manage to identify what is the core issue they want to discuss. As the interviews in the German course are additional and optional, very often it's only 1. Quite often it's at the beginning and at the end of the semester, and there's not that many students that would come offer than that, more often than that. And in the article, my colleague is comparing this particular student's journey, because the student who was selected for the case study was taking a second course. So it was his second time experiencing language advising. And so the article also includes or could follow him longer than just through 1 interview.
I see. Right. And so these are, programs that have been kind of existing and continuing for a while. What from your study that's going to inform any future developments to your center?
Yeah. What we have learned is that it kind of confirmed and kind of learned afresh that it's really worth offering advising or out of class learning support, even for students who are advanced, even for students who are like mature, because sometimes there would be this idea that master students or PhD students, they are mature enough to do self-study, to study independently. This small study proves that it's worth providing this kind of support to any student. They benefit from it, even if they are capable of doing certain things on their own. Usually they do it better, they go deeper, they get more insight, they get more understanding when they are doing this in this reflective dialogue with a language professional. What was also kind of confirmed is this need to individualize the approach that students with lower language level should have a chance to choose the language of advising was confirmed. We are right now considering offering language advising for learners of Czech for foreigners. And this is exactly going to be the question we can reconsider and consider. The problem is, when we offer it in other languages than the target language, we might not be able to find advisors who have that language in their language portfolio.
And also the advising skills as well, I guess, and the teaching skills.
Exactly, this combination of the language of advising and exactly. Yeah. But Czech for foreigners is usually offered from the scratch, from low levels. So to conduct those in the target language might really be challenging, if not impossible.
Right. No, I can see. So based on what you learned, what you had confirmed for you from your study, if someone else in another kind of similar or comparable context, possibly where more than one foreign language is being learned or second language is being learned at the same time, and they wanted to start up a kind of language center program, what's the takeaway? What have you learned that's the number one thing that they should prioritize above everything else?
It's difficult to find one top tip. I don't really have an advice for someone starting this, but both starting and conducting language advising, I think it's worth really like tracing the practice. Yeah, I think the study helped us to really reflect on what we are doing, because we have been doing it for a couple of years, and you seem you know everything. You have experience, but having data and having analyzing them and having this peer conversation with other colleagues conducting the same practice, it's really useful. So maybe that would be also an advice for even starting programs, that it's worth to have at least a small team, at least another colleague who you can have those conversations with. That's where we started, and that's what we are still keeping to go observe other colleagues providing advising sessions, to have recordings and then reflecting on them together, to have those peer conversations about sometimes it's about problematic situations, but sometimes it's even worth like discussing the usual, what we think is the core of the practice.
Okay, so that's some good advice there about kind of smooth operations of one of these centers. It's good to engage in this kind of systematic reflection of, whether the center is meeting the needs and, what's the kind of learner's journey through it. Right. I can see. Oh, no, that's really interesting. Well, yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but we talked a lot about the article. Is there anything else that you're working on? Anything new that you're working on at the moment that you can share?
Yeah, just like you, I'm working hard on my PhD, and it's also case study design of a research, analyzing, advising interviews in detail, in depth, and one of its outcomes should be also like practical activities for advising training, or for training. So this is what I'm working on, and I hope it will be soon finalized and published.
And that's in your language center at Masaryk University.
Mm-hmm. And at Masaryk University, right now, we are preparing a small internal conference where we share what we have been doing last year, and we are planning a new semester. So we are once again opening English autonomously and other chances for our students to get engaged in language advising.
Oh, that's fantastic. So there's a lot going on, I can see. So, and all of the things that you talked about today will include links to all of those things to accompany the video, so anyone can follow up. But the main focus was this paper from last year. So again, the title was Fostering Students' Self-Directed Language Learning Approaches to Advising, and that was in SiSAL journal. So that was, that was a really interesting read. And Martina Šindelářová Skupeňová, thank you very much for joining today. That was a lovely conversation, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you too, Tom. Bye-bye.